Algebra 1, Spiral Exam Number 1, Study Guide. A spiral exam is a test that covers everything you've studied so far in Algebra 1, a cumulative exam, a final you can think of it. For each spiral test, you will need to go over all the concepts that you've learned so far and look over problems. This study guide will cover 10 key concepts and skills on Spiral Exam Number 1. To get ready for the test, you should also review your notes and unit study guides to help you study for the test. This test is multiple choice and is on Math Excel. The first concept is you need to be able to find the exact values or estimated values of numbers so that you can compare their values. So one way to do that is put numbers in order from smallest to largest. To do that, you'll need to estimate their value. With the square root, you think of perfect squares that are around that value. For example, around 5, square root of 5, we have the square root of 4, which is 2, and the square root of 9, which is 3. So that means the square root of 5 is somewhere between 2 and 3. It's a little closer. Since 5 is a little closer to 4 than it is to 9, that means its square root will be closer. So we could estimate that at 2.2. 25ths, or 20 divided by 5, is 4. Negative 3. 1/2 you can think of as 0.5. Negative 3/2 is the same as negative 1.5, and then we have 6. So you start with the negative numbers, and you look at the number that's most negative. That's the smallest. So negative 3 goes first. Then negative 1.5, but let's write that in its original form as negative 3/2. I'm just going to cross these off. Now we'll go to our positive numbers, and we'll look for our smallest positive, which is our fraction amount, a half. And we'll just move our way up. We've got 2.2, approximately, square root of 5. Then we've got 25ths, the value of that is 4. And finally, just the integer 6. The second concept you want to be solid on is to be able to write and simplify expressions for simple geometric formulas like perimeter of a shape or area of a rectangle. So in this example, let's find an expression that represents the perimeter of this rectangle that you see. Then we'll find an expression for the area. So you need to remember perimeter of a rectangle is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Let's try that again. So we have an expression for length. We'll take 2 times that expression plus 2 times the value of the width, which is 5. Now we'll just simplify by distributing and multiplying here and then combining like terms. And what we end up with is an expression that's for the perimeter of that rectangle. Now to find an area of a rectangle, we take length times width. So we know the value of the width, which is 5, and expression for the length, which is 3x plus 2. And then to simplify, we just follow the math, which is to distribute. And then we end up with 15x plus 10, which is an expression that represents the area of this rectangle. A third concept to review is to be able to read a real-life situation, set up and solve an equation for the situation. Also, just to be able to solve a given equation. So we have a baker who orders 162 eggs. Each carton contains 18 eggs. Write an equation to find the number x of cartons. So we know that there are 18 eggs per carton. Since carton stands for x, we could multiply that, and that would tell us how many eggs there are. And we know our total, it is 162, so we set that equal to 162. Now let's solve equations 4 and 5. So in that, we simply look what we've got and then follow the math. So we need to distribute the 4 for starters. Bring down your 32. Then you're going to collect variables on one side, so our 4x will be on the left, and numbers on the right side. So 32 minus 20 is 12. Now we'll just undo the math, so we'll divide each side by 4. So in this equation, x equals 3. In our next example, we've got another parenthesis, so we'll bring down the 5h and then distribute that 2 to both of those terms. Now we're going to combine like terms, so 5h's minus 2 will give us 3h's, plus 22 equals negative 5. Now let's move that 22 over. So we get 3h equals negative 27. Divide both sides by 3. So h in this equation equals negative 9. In our next concept, we need to be able to set up expressions for two real-life situations and then set them equal to each other. Find out when their costs would be the same. So we've got a situation from nature. A cheetah is running 90 feet per second. An antelope starts running at the same time at 60 feet per second, but is 120 feet ahead of the cheetah. After how many seconds will the cheetah catch up to the antelope? Or will their distances be the same? So that means distance of the cheetah will equal distance of the antelope. So let's write a math expression for each of those distances. So the cheetah is running. First of all, let's just figure out what we need to know. How many seconds? So we'll let that be our variable x. Cheetah is running 90 feet per second. So we can multiply that 90 by each second to tell how far the cheetah goes as time goes by. The antelope is 60 feet per second, but the antelope started 120 feet ahead. We set their expressions for their distances equal to each other. Now we can solve. So we'll subtract our 60x and get 30 equals 120, and then divide by 30. So it won't take long for the cheetah to catch up, only 4 seconds. Another type of problem you need to be able to do is to be able to set up a proportion to solve a problem with comparative values. Remember, a proportion is when you have one ratio set equal to another. I'll just use variables. So if a 6-foot tall tent casts a 10-foot shadow, then how long is the shadow of a 9-foot tall adult elephant? So see how we're comparing height to the length of a shadow. So we can say height of the tent, which is 6, compared to height of the shadow, which is 10, or sorry, length of the shadow. Now we'll do the exact same thing on the other side using x for what we're looking for. Then how long is the shadow, so we'll match that up with the shadow on the left side of a 9-foot tall elephant. So see, we have height, how tall the tent and the elephant is compared to the length of our shadows. Now when you have a proportion set up, you can solve by using cross-multiplying or cross products. So 6 times x will give us 6x. 9 times 10 is 90. Divide both sides by 6. So 15, and I'm looking for feet long of my shadow. Not mine, actually, the shadow of the elephant. Now look at the next one. Milton and San Jose are 9 inches apart on a map that has a scale that for every 1 inch, that counts for 13 miles. How far apart are the real cities? So if they are 9 inches on the map, then we want to know how many miles, so we can set up our proportion. So 1 times x is x. 13 times 9, I believe, is 117. Yes, and that would be miles. Another concept to review is to be able to write a linear equation or a formula, to rewrite a linear equation or formula for a given variable. Sometimes it will say solve. So solve the linear equation for y, for example. So solve or rewrite. So on number 8, we've got 2y minus 18x equals 26. We're going to solve for y. Now this will end up looking a little strange because we won't get a number answer. We will get an equation answer. So we divide by 2, and then y equals, and I'm going to divide both of those by 2. So let me just emphasize that by writing this divided by 2 and our 18 divided by 2. So negative 26 divided by 2 is negative 13. 18 divided by 2 is 9x. So that's what the problem's asking you to do, just to rewrite or solve that equation for y. So we'll do the same on this second equation. We need to isolate y, so we're going to subtract that 2x. So our answer will not be a number answer, it will be an equation answer. Solved for y. Y equals 7 minus 2x. Sometimes you'll have a formula where you won't have any number values or just a few and many variables. We can still use the steps to solve to rewrite that. So we're going to rewrite this equation for b. So right now I just ask myself what's happening to b. Well, it's being multiplied and added, so I need to subtract what is being added to it, just for starters. Then I bring down that term with b in it, bc equals, and just write f minus de. That's all I can do. I can't combine. Now I need to divide both sides by c so that I can get b by itself, and then I simply write what I've got over here. So again, the answer is not a number. It's, in this case, it looks like a formula, an equation form. But this is that formula rewritten for b equals. Make sure that you can solve a simple inequality for the spiral exam. Remember that solving an inequality is like solving an equation, except when you multiply or divide by a negative. So we'll do the math to get x by itself, and then we need to divide by negative 2. When we do that, it changes the nature of our inequality, so we need to switch the sign. And I could rewrite this just with x on the left side. I need to move the sign with it. So x is greater than or equal to negative 5. Sometimes you'll have fractions in real life situations, and you need to be able to work with those. So you're making cupcakes for a friend's party. The recipe uses 2/3 of a cup of cocoa powder, and you make 5 batches of this recipe. How many cups of cocoa powder will you use? So you use 2/3 5 times, so you're going to multiply 2/3 times 5. I can think of 5 in fraction form, then multiply numerators together and denominators. And now we'll write that as an answer that makes sense. We usually don't think of things like 10/3 cup. So 3 goes into 10 3 times. That's 9 with 1 left over. So 3 3/3 cups of cocoa powder is what you'll need. Make sure that you can find a percent or a number given a percent of a value. So in number 12, this says 30 is what percent of 80. So remember that little formula that we have the part compared to the whole equals the percent over 100. So 30 is our part, of 80 is the whole, and we don't know what the percent is. So we can set up a proportion. And I'm sure you probably caught this, but 30 times 10 is actually 3,000. So we need to take 3,000 divided by 80, which would give us 37.5. And that's our percent, 30 times 100. So 37.5%. All right, now be sure that you look over your notes and problems from each unit and the concept to get ready for the test. Look at your handout at the list of all the different concepts from those units. Take a minute, pause the video, and make a note of any of those as you read those concepts of things that you know you're going to go look and study. Note what unit and concept they are in so that you can go to the packet. And then finally, there is one more video in this playlist titled Spiral Exam Success. Watch that video and then answer the final questions on your study guide.